In the year 1876, the Ottoman Empire stood at a crossroads, a moment defined by economic strain, political upheaval, and the promise of constitutional governance. Sultan Abdul Aziz, who had ascended the throne in 1861, presided over a period marked by ambitious reforms, extravagant spending, and growing discontent. Though his reign saw some modernization and infrastructure development, it was ultimately overshadowed by a severe financial crisis that destabilized the empire and set the stage for a dramatic political transformation. Abdul Aziz's approach to governance was shaped by the dual pressures of modernization and imperial prestige. He invested heavily in military modernization, seeking to equip the Ottoman army with European-style weaponry and training. Palaces and public works were constructed with little regard for the long-term fiscal consequences, reflecting both a desire to project power and a belief in the transformative potential of visible grandeur. Yet, these expenditures came at a steep cost. By the mid-1870s, the Ottoman treasury was depleted, and mounting debts to European creditors threatened the empire's economic sovereignty. The financial crisis that erupted under Abdul Aziz's rule was not merely a result of lavish spending. It reflected structural weaknesses in the Ottoman economy, including inefficient tax collection, reliance on foreign loans, and the limited productivity of provincial agriculture. The empire's growing engagement with European capital markets, while essential for modernization, also increased dependence on external oversight. As debts mounted, European financiers began to wield unprecedented influence over Ottoman fiscal policy, setting the stage for a delicate balance between survival and sovereignty. Domestic dissatisfaction accompanied economic turmoil. The empire's bureaucratic and military elites, burdened by delayed salaries and reduced resources, grew increasingly critical of Abdul Aziz. Intellectuals and reformist circles, inspired by European liberalism and the ideas emerging from the earlier Tanzimat reforms, called for accountability, modernization, and representative governance. Popular discontent, though uneven across the empire's diverse provinces, contributed to an atmosphere of political tension and uncertainty. Amid this backdrop of financial and social strain, Abdul Aziz was deposed in May 1876. His removal followed months of mounting criticism from both within the palace and among leading officials. The circumstances surrounding his death shortly thereafter remain controversial, but most accounts suggest he was killed under suspicious circumstances, leaving a sense of crisis and uncertainty at the heart of the Ottoman state. The deposition of Abdul Aziz signaled a broader shift in Ottoman politics, from cautious reform and autocratic oversight toward the possibility of constitutional governance. The fall of Abdul Aziz created a unique opportunity for reformists to implement a measure that had long been discussed but never fully realized: a written constitution. Earlier efforts during the Tanzimat period had introduced sweeping legal and administrative changes, but these were enacted by imperial decree, leaving ultimate authority firmly in the hands of the Sultan. By contrast, the new constitutional framework promised to limit monarchical power, establish representative institutions, and guarantee civil liberties. In this sense, the first Ottoman constitution represented both continuity with Tanzimat ideals and a decisive break from absolute rule. Promulgated later in 1876, the Constitution established a bicameral legislature designed to provide a forum for debate, oversight, and legislation. The lower house was to be elected, while the upper house would include appointed members drawn from the Sultan's advisors and senior officials. Together, these chambers symbolized an unprecedented commitment to participatory governance in the empire. For the first time in Ottoman history, citizens could look to a formalized legal framework, guaranteeing certain rights and establishing mechanisms for accountability. Civil liberties formed a central element of the new constitutional order. The document promised equality before the law for all subjects, regardless of religion or ethnicity, echoing the ideals first introduced during the Tanzimat reforms. Muslims, Christians, and Jews were to enjoy protections for life, property, and honor, with the expectation that the state would enforce these rights fairly. The Constitution also sought to establish a standardized legal framework, addressing centuries of local variation in judicial practice and administrative authority. The introduction of the Constitution marked the official end of the Tanzimat era, While the Tanzimat reforms had laid the groundwork for modernization and legal equality, they were largely top-down initiatives, imposed from the palace without sustained popular participation. The Constitution, by contrast, institutionalized reform in a manner that involved representative institutions and codified civil liberties. In doing so, it reflected the growing influence of reformist intellectuals, bureaucrats, and military officers who sought to combine European-style governance with the traditional structures of the Ottoman state. Despite its promise, the first Ottoman constitution faced immediate challenges. Political divisions emerged between conservative forces who favored the continuation of absolute monarchy and progressive reformists advocating for broader civil rights and parliamentary oversight. Economic instability persisted, complicating the implementation of constitutional governance. In many provinces, local elites and religious authorities resisted the centralizing tendencies inherent in the new system, fearing loss of power and influence. International factors further complicated the situation. European powers, while supportive of Ottoman sovereignty in principle, closely monitored the empire's political developments. Foreign diplomats and creditors pressured the government to maintain stability, ensure fiscal responsibility, and uphold the guarantees of equality promised in the Constitution. This created an environment in which the new political order was simultaneously inspired by reformist ideals and constrained by external expectations. The brief constitutional period of 1876, though fraught with tension, represented a significant milestone in Ottoman history. For the first time, governance was formally bound by law rather than the personal discretion of the Sultan. Civil rights and parliamentary institutions were no longer theoretical aspirations, but legally recognized frameworks guiding the administration of the empire. The constitutional experiment laid the foundation for later political movements, including the Young Turks, who would seek to expand and enforce these principles in the decades to come. Abdul Aziz's deposition and the introduction of the constitution reflected the broader evolution of the Ottoman state. The empire had survived centuries of territorial expansion, military challenge, and social diversity, but the late 19th century demanded a different form of governance. The combination of financial crisis, popular expectation, and European pressure created a historical moment in which autocratic rule could no longer suffice. Constitutional governance, though nascent and fragile, was the empire's response to these converging pressures. In historical perspective, 1876 can be seen as both an ending and a beginning. The Tanzimat era's top-down reforms concluded, yet the principles of legal equality, centralized administration, and modernization persisted. The Constitution institutionalized these ideals in a more participatory framework, establishing the first formal limits on imperial authority. Though the political experiment would face setbacks in subsequent years, it demonstrated that the Ottoman Empire was capable of adapting its institutions in response to internal and external pressures. Ultimately, the events surrounding Abdul Aziz and the first Ottoman constitution illustrate the complexities of reform in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire, confronting both fiscal and political crises. The deposition of a sultan, the promise of civil liberties, and the establishment of a representative parliament all point to an empire grappling with the challenges of modernization, legitimacy, and sovereignty. While the Constitution's immediate impact was limited by entrenched interests and ongoing instability, it set a precedent that would influence Ottoman politics well into the 20th century. The year 1876 stands as a testament to the Ottoman Empire's resilience and adaptability. Even in the face of financial collapse, political assassination, and social tension, the state sought to codify reform, extend legal rights, and create institutions capable of enduring beyond the reign of any single ruler. Abdul Aziz's reign ended in tragedy, yet it provided the conditions for a transformative moment in Ottoman history, a moment that marked the shift from autocratic experimentation to the formal establishment of constitutional governance, shaping the empire's trajectory in its final decades.